I was born in a small town in the Midwest, in a house that always smelled like old wood and stale coffee. The street we lived on was quiet, lined with tall oak trees that turned gold and red every fall. From the outside, our house looked just like everyone else's: white siding, a small front yard, and a porch swing that creaked when the wind blew. But inside, it was different. My father, John, was a big man with a loud voice that carried through the walls. He worked at a local factory, and he was never happy. When he came home from work, he was always angry, always tired. I never knew what would set him off. Sometimes it was a messy kitchen. Sometimes it was me. My mother, Mary, tried to keep the peace. She had soft brown hair and warm hands that smelled like soap and bread. She worked part-time at a diner downtown, but she spent most of her time trying to make sure my father didn't get angry. I was only 6 years old when I first felt real fear. It was a summer evening, and I had spilled a glass of milk on the kitchen floor. My father came into the room, his face red and his eyes hard. "What the hell is this, Emma?" he shouted. I tried to explain, but my voice was too small. I said, "I'm sorry, Daddy. I'll clean it up." But he didn't care. He grabbed my arm so hard it left bruises. "You're so damn useless," he said, and pushed me away. I fell to the floor, my knees scraped against the old linoleum. My mother rushed to my side, her eyes full of tears. "John, please," she said. "She's just a child." "Shut up, Mary," he snapped. "She has to learn." I didn't cry. I had already learned that crying only made it worse. I just nodded and started wiping up the milk, my hands shaking. That night, my mother tucked me into bed and kissed my forehead. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I wanted to ask her why he was so angry all the time, but I was too scared. So I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. The next morning, everything seemed normal again. My father drank his coffee in silence while my mother made pancakes. I ate quickly and quietly, hoping he wouldn't notice me. At school, I tried to forget. I liked school because it was quiet and safe. My teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, had kind eyes and always called me sweetie. She said I was a good student, but I never believed her. My father said I was stupid, and I thought he must be right. Sometimes, after school, I would go to the library. It was small and smelled like old paper, but it was my favorite place in the world. I would sit in the back corner, reading books about girls who were brave and strong. I wanted to be like them, but I didn't know how. When I came home, my father would be sitting in his chair, watching TV. My mother would be in the kitchen, her face tired and pale. She would smile at me and ask about my day, but we never talked about what happened in the house. One night, I woke up to the sound of shouting. My father's voice was loud and angry, and my mother was crying. "You think you can tell me what to do?" he yelled. "You think you're better than me?" "No, John," my mother said, her voice shaking. "Please, just calm down." I lay in my bed, frozen. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and tried to block out the noise. But it was no use. I could hear every word. "You're just like her," my father said. "Weak. Useless." My mother didn't say anything after that. The silence was worse than the shouting. The next morning, my mother had a bruise on her cheek. She tried to hide it with makeup, but I could still see it. She smiled at me and said, "Everything's okay, honey. Don't worry." But I did worry. I worried all the time. As I got older, I learned how to stay out of his way. I did my chores without being told. I stayed quiet, kept my head down. My father didn't like noise, so I learned to move like a shadow. Sometimes, when he was in a good mood, he would ruffle my hair and call me his little girl. But even then, I didn't feel safe. His good moods never lasted. One winter day, when the snow was falling thick outside, I was sitting in the living room reading a book. My father came in from the garage, his boots leaving wet footprints on the carpet. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice flat. "Reading," I said softly. He frowned. "Reading doesn't help anyone. You should be helping your mother." I closed the book and stood up. "Okay, Daddy," I said. I went into the kitchen and started washing the dishes, even though my mother told me I didn't have to. She put her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "It's okay, Emma. Go read your book." But I couldn't. I knew it would only make him angry. At night, when I lay in bed, I would listen to the wind blowing outside. I would close my eyes and pretend I was somewhere else, anywhere else. Somewhere with no shouting, no bruises, no fear. When I turned 8, I started writing in a little notebook I kept hidden under my mattress. I wrote about the things I couldn't say out loud. I wrote about the way my mother's eyes looked when she was scared, and the way my father's voice made my heart feel small. I wrote about how I wanted to run away. But I didn't know how to run. I didn't even know if I could. One afternoon, my father came home early from work. He was in a bad mood, I could tell by the way he slammed the door. My mother was in the kitchen, humming softly as she made dinner. "What's for dinner?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Chicken and rice," my mother said. "I'm sick of chicken," he snapped. "I'm sorry," she said. "We don't have much money this week." He didn't like that answer. He walked over to her and grabbed her wrist. "Don't make excuses." She flinched, and I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to yell at him to stop, but I couldn't. I was too scared. He let go of her and turned to me. "What are you looking at?" He barked. "Nothing," I said quickly. "Then get out of here," he said. I ran to my room and closed the door. I sat on my bed, hugging my knees to my chest. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. A little while later, my mother knocked on my door. She came in and sat beside me, her face pale and tired. "Emma, I want you to remember something," she said. "None of this is your fault. Your father has his own demons. It's not because of you." I nodded, but I didn't believe her. It felt like it was my fault. If I was a better daughter, maybe he wouldn't be so angry. That night, I heard them talking in the kitchen. My father's voice was low and mean. "I'm done with this," he said. "She's too much trouble." "What do you mean?" my mother asked, her voice shaking. "I'm saying maybe it's time she went to live somewhere else," he said. "I know a man who needs help on his farm. He'll pay me for her." My heart stopped. He was talking about me. He wanted to sell me. My mother gasped. "John, she's your daughter." "She's a burden," he said coldly. "He'll pay good money. It's better this way." I lay in bed, my body shaking. My father was going to send me away, like I was nothing. My mother tried to argue, but I could tell she was scared too. When she came to my room later, I pretended to be asleep. She sat on the edge of my bed and stroked my hair. "I won't let him do it," she whispered. "I promise, Emma. I won't let him." But I didn't know if she could keep that promise. The next day, I went to school like normal. I sat in class and tried to listen, but my mind was far away. I kept thinking about what my father had said. I kept seeing his face in my mind, cold, hard, uncaring. When I got home, he was sitting on the couch, talking on the phone. His voice was low, and he kept glancing at me. I knew he was talking about me. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the man my father wanted to send me to. I didn't know him, but I knew he wouldn't love me. I would be alone. But I also thought about what my mother had said, "I won't let him." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that there was still hope. So I made a promise to myself, I would be brave. I didn't know how, but I would find a way to escape. I wouldn't let my father's betrayal be the end of my story. I would find a way to be free. The next morning, The winter sun was shining through the thin curtains in my room, but it didn't make me feel any warmer inside. I could hear the sounds of my father moving around downstairs, the creak of the floorboards and the clatter of his coffee cup on the kitchen table. My stomach hurt just thinking about facing him. I got dressed quickly and went downstairs. My mother was already up, wearing her blue bathrobe. She was making breakfast, her movements careful and quiet, like she was trying not to wake a sleeping bear. She gave me a small smile when I walked in. "Good morning, Emma," she said softly. "Good morning, Mama," I said back. I sat at the table and watched her flip pancakes on the griddle. The smell was warm and sweet, but I didn't feel like eating. My father sat across from me, staring at the newspaper. He didn't even look up. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. When my mother put a plate of pancakes in front of him, he grunted. "Too thin," he muttered. My mother's hands trembled a little as she wiped her hands on a dish towel. I ate slowly, not wanting to draw any attention to myself. I kept my eyes down and chewed each bite carefully, even though my throat felt too tight. After breakfast, my father left for work without saying goodbye. The door slammed shut behind him, and the house fell quiet. My mother sank into a chair across from me. Her face looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. "Are you okay, Mama?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment, and then she gave me a sad smile. "I'm fine, baby," she said. But I could tell she was lying. She reached across the table and took my hand in hers. "Listen to me, Emma," she said, her voice low. "Your father, he's not a kind man. But I promise you, I will never let him take you away from me. Never." I wanted to believe her, but I was still so scared. "What if he tries anyway?" I asked in a small voice. She squeezed my hand. "Then we'll find a way to stop him," she said firmly. "You're my daughter. I won't let him hurt you any more than he already has." I nodded, trying to be brave. But inside, I still felt like a small bird trapped in a cage. That afternoon, I went to the library after school. I liked the library because it was quiet and no one yelled there. The librarian, Mrs. Hayes, always gave me a kind smile when I walked in. "Hello, Emma," she said. "What are you reading today?" I shrugged. "Something with a happy ending," I said. She nodded. "That's a good choice," she said, handing me a book. "We all need a little hope, don't we?" I took the book and went to my favorite corner. I curled up on the soft chair and lost myself in the story. In the book, the main character was a girl who faced so many problems but never gave up. I wished I could be like her. When it was time to go home, I walked slowly, dragging my feet. I didn't want to go back to the house. But I knew my mother would be waiting for me. When I got home, my father's car wasn't in the driveway. My mother was in the kitchen, her back to me. I could see her shoulders shaking, and I knew she was crying. "Mama?" I said softly. She turned around quickly and wiped her eyes. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, her voice a little too bright. "How was the library?" "It was good," I said. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but I could see her eyes were red. "I'm fine," she said again. I wanted to tell her that it was okay to cry, that she didn't have to be so strong all the time. But I didn't know how to say it, so I just hugged her. She hugged me back, holding me tight like she was afraid I would slip away. That night, after dinner, my mother told me to go to bed early. "You need your sleep," she said. "You have school tomorrow." I nodded and went up to my room. I brushed my teeth and changed into my pajamas, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to the sound of my parents talking in the kitchen. My father's voice was low and hard. "I'm telling you, Mary," he said. "It's for the best." "No, John," my mother said, her voice shaking. "She's our daughter." "She's a burden," my father snapped. "We can't afford to keep her. The money will help us." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I pulled the blankets up to my chin and tried to breathe quietly. My mother's voice was soft and pleading. "Please, John. Don't do this." "I've already made arrangements," he said. "She's leaving at the end of the week." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father really was going to sell me. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I lay there, frozen, until I heard my mother's footsteps coming up the stairs. She paused outside my door, and I shut my eyes tight, pretending to be asleep. She opened the door and stood there for a moment, watching me. Then she came in and sat on the edge of my bed. "Emma," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I won't let it happen. I swear to you, I'll find a way to keep you safe." I wanted to believe her so badly, but I was too scared to open my eyes. I just lay there, listening to her soft breathing as she sat with me. Eventually, she got up and went back downstairs. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, tears slipping down my cheeks. The next day at school, I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept replaying what I'd heard the night before. My teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, noticed that I was quiet. "Emma, is everything okay?" she asked gently. I nodded quickly. "I'm just tired," I said. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "If you ever need to talk, you can tell me," she said softly. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to tell her how scared I was and how my father was going to sell me. But I couldn't. I was too afraid of what would happen if anyone found out. So I just nodded and kept my head down. After school, I went to the library again. I didn't want to go home. I sat in the corner, my eyes on the words in front of me but my mind somewhere else. Mrs. Hayes came over and sat beside me. "Emma," she said gently. "You seem sad today." I shrugged. "I'm okay," I lied. She gave me a kind smile. "You're a brave girl, you know," she said. "I can tell." I nodded, but I didn't feel brave at all. When I finally went home, the house was dark and quiet. My mother was in the living room, sitting on the couch with her hands folded in her lap. "Hi, Mama," I said softly. She looked up and gave me a weak smile. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. "Where's Daddy?" I asked, even though I was afraid to know. "He's out," she said quietly. "He'll be back later." She stood up and took my hand. "Emma," she said, her voice serious. "Listen to me carefully. If he tries to take you, you run. Do you hear me? You run as fast as you can and don't look back." I felt my eyes fill with tears. "But where will I go?" She squeezed my hand tight. "I don't know, baby. But you'll find somewhere safe. I promise." I nodded, even though I didn't know how I could ever be safe again. That night, I packed a small bag with some clothes and my favorite book. I hid it under my bed, just in case. I lay in the dark, listening to every sound in the house. My father came home late, and I could hear him moving around downstairs. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't come up to my room. Eventually, I fell into a restless sleep. When I woke up the next morning, the snow was falling again, thick and heavy. The world outside was white and silent, like it was holding its breath. I got dressed quickly and went downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen, her face pale but determined. "Emma," she said softly, "today you're going to school, and after that, you're going to stay with Mrs. Reynolds for a while. Do you understand?" I nodded, my heart racing. "Okay, Mama." She kissed my forehead and hugged me tight. "I love you, Emma," she whispered. "More than anything in this world." "I love you too, Mama," I said, my voice shaking. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew my mother would do everything she could to protect me. And I promised myself I would be brave, no matter how scared I felt. Because I knew now that my father's betrayal didn't have to be the end of my story. The day was cold, and the snow made everything look so clean and bright, like nothing bad could ever happen. But I knew that was just an illusion. Underneath that blanket of white, there were secrets and pain. I went to school like my mother told me to. My heart was pounding so hard that I thought everyone could hear it. I kept my head down, trying not to draw attention to myself. At lunch, I sat with my best friend, Ava. She was always so cheerful and kind, with her curly brown hair and warm smile. But today, I could barely focus on what she was saying. "Are you okay, Emma?" she asked, frowning. I nodded quickly. "I'm fine," I lied. "You look really tired," she said softly. "You can talk to me, you know." I wanted to tell her everything, but I was too scared. So I just nodded again and pushed my food around my plate. After lunch, Mrs. Reynolds pulled me aside. "Emma, your mom called me this morning," she said gently. "She told me you might be staying with me for a little while." I nodded, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "Yes, ma'am," I said quietly. She put a hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We're going to take good care of you," she said. "You're safe with us." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But deep down, I still felt like the ground could fall away at any moment. After school, I went home quickly to grab the small bag I had packed. My father's car wasn't in the driveway, and I breathed a sigh of relief. My mother met me at the door, her face pale but calm. "Are you ready?" she asked. I nodded. She pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. "This has Mrs. Reynolds' address and phone number," she said. "If anything happens, you call her. Don't wait." "Okay, Mama," I said, trying to sound brave. She hugged me tight, and I felt her tears on my cheek. "I love you so much, Emma," she whispered. "I love you too, Mama," I said. Then she walked me to the car and helped me get in. She gave me one last, long look, like she was trying to memorize my face. "Be good, okay?" she said softly. I nodded, and she closed the door. I watched her wave as I pulled away, my heart aching in my chest. When I got to Mrs. Reynolds' house, she welcomed me with a warm smile. Her house smelled like cinnamon and cookies, and there was a fire crackling in the fireplace. "Come on in, Emma," she said. "Let's get you settled." She showed me to a small guest room with a cozy bed and a patchwork quilt. "You can put your things here," she said kindly. I nodded and set my bag down. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at me gently. "I know this is scary, Emma," she said. "But you're safe here. I promise." I wanted to believe her. I really did. "Thank you," I said in a small voice. That night, Mrs. Reynolds made spaghetti for dinner. It was warm and comforting, and for a little while, I felt like I could breathe again. After dinner, I sat by the fire with a cup of hot cocoa. Mrs. Reynolds sat in her chair, knitting a bright red scarf. "Emma," she said softly, "I want you to know that no matter what happens, you're not alone. You have people who care about you." I nodded, feeling tears slip down my cheeks. "Thank you," I said again. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than you know, sweetheart," she said. "Don't ever forget that." I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning with fear and questions. What if my father came to find me? What if he took me away in the middle of the night? I got up and went to the window, looking out at the quiet, snowy street. Everything looked so peaceful, but I knew that peace was fragile. I curled up under the quilt and hugged my favorite book to my chest. I whispered the words of my favorite poem to myself, like a secret prayer. The world is full of fear and pain. But I will rise and stand again. In the morning, Mrs. Reynolds made pancakes and bacon. She smiled at me and said, "How did you sleep, Emma?" I shrugged. "Okay," I lied. She nodded, like she could see right through me. "It's okay to be scared," she said gently. "But you don't have to be alone." After breakfast, she drove me to school. As we pulled up in front of the building, she gave me a hug. "You're a brave girl," she said. "Don't ever forget that." I nodded and got out of the car. I walked into school, feeling a little bit stronger, like I had a shield around me. At lunch, Ava sat with me again. "You're staying with Mrs. Reynolds?" she asked. I nodded. "Just for a while," I said. "I'm glad," she said. "She's really nice." I smiled a little. "Yeah, she is." In the afternoon, there was an assembly in the gym. We all sat in the bleachers, listening to the principal talk about kindness and courage. I tried to focus on his words, but my mind kept drifting. Suddenly, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned and saw a boy from my class, Jake, looking at me with wide eyes. "Emma," he whispered. "I saw your dad in the parking lot. He's here." My heart stopped. I looked at the gym doors, and sure enough, I saw my father's angry face peeking through the window. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My hands started to shake, and I wanted to run, but I didn't know where to go. Mrs. Reynolds was sitting with the teachers, and when she saw my father, her face went pale. She stood up and walked quickly to the principal, whispering something in his ear. The principal nodded and came over to me. "Emma," he said quietly, "come with me." I followed him out of the gym, my legs like jelly. Mrs. Reynolds was waiting in the hallway. "Emma," she said softly, "I'm going to take you home now." "It's okay." My father was arguing with the school secretary, his face red and furious. "She's my daughter," he was shouting. "You have no right to keep her from me." Mrs. Reynolds put a hand on my shoulder and led me out the back door, away from the shouting. My heart was racing so fast that I thought I might faint. When we got to her car, she helped me in and locked the doors. "You're safe now," she said firmly. "He won't hurt you." I nodded, but I was still shaking all over. As she drove away, I looked out the window and saw my father's face, twisted with rage. I knew he wouldn't give up so easily. When we got back to her house, Mrs. Reynolds sat me down and looked me in the eyes. "Emma," she said gently, "I need to tell you something important. Your mother and I have talked to a lawyer. If your father tries to take you, we'll fight him in court. You don't have to go with him if you don't want to." I felt tears spill down my cheeks. "I don't want to," I whispered. "I'm so scared, Mrs. Reynolds." She pulled me into a hug. "I know, sweetheart," she said softly. "But you're not alone. We're going to protect you." That night, I lay in bed, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. The crackle of the fire downstairs, the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. I thought about my mother and how hard she was fighting to keep me safe. I thought about Mrs. Reynolds and how kind she was to me. And I thought about my father, how he had betrayed me in the worst way. But even though I was scared, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him win. The next morning was calm and quiet, but I woke up with a feeling like something heavy was sitting on my chest. Mrs. Reynolds knocked on the door and peeked in. "Emma, sweetheart, breakfast is ready," she said. I nodded and got out of bed, still feeling that tightness in my chest. When I went downstairs, Mrs. Reynolds had made warm oatmeal with brown sugar and raisins. It smelled sweet and safe. "Good morning, Emma," she said with a smile. "I thought you might like something warm today." "Thank you," I said softly. As I sat down, my mother came in through the back door, wrapped in her long coat. Her eyes looked tired, but when she saw me, she smiled. "Hi, baby," she said, giving me a hug. I held on tight. "Mama," I whispered. "I'm so glad you're here." She squeezed me gently. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you," she said firmly. "I promise." We ate breakfast together, and for a little while, it almost felt normal. But then Mrs. Reynolds said, "Emma, your mother and I have to talk about something important today. You can go read or play in the living room while we talk, okay?" I nodded, even though I wanted to hear what they were saying. I went into the living room and sat on the couch, holding my favorite book, but I couldn't focus on the words. I listened carefully, hoping to catch pieces of their conversation. "Karen, we need to file for an emergency protective order," Mrs. Reynolds said. "If he's trying to take Emma, we have to move fast." My mother's voice was shaky but strong. "I know," she said. "I already called the lawyer this morning. She said we can meet her this afternoon." "Good," Mrs. Reynolds said. "Emma's been through enough. We need to keep her safe." I felt a flicker of hope. They were working together. They were fighting for me. Later, Mrs. Reynolds drove us to a small law office downtown. The lawyer was a kind woman named Ms. Thompson. She had dark hair pulled back in a bun and wore glasses that made her look very serious. "Emma, I'm so sorry you're going through this," she said when she met me. "But you're very brave." I nodded, feeling shy. "Thank you," I said quietly. Ms. Thompson talked to my mother and Mrs. Reynolds about filing for a restraining order against my father. She explained that if the judge agreed, my father wouldn't be allowed to come near me or my mother anymore. "But what if he tries anyway?" I asked in a small voice. Ms. Thompson looked at me kindly. "If he does, he can be arrested," she said. "The law is on your side, Emma. You have people who believe you and want to protect you." I tried to hold on to that thought like a lifeline. I wanted to believe that the law could keep me safe. We left the law office with a stack of papers and a heavy feeling in our hearts. My mother squeezed my hand. "We're going to do this together," she said. "I'm not letting him take you." "I know, Mama," I said softly. Back at Mrs. Reynolds' house, we sat together in the living room, going over the paperwork. My mother's hands were shaking a little as she signed the forms. "I'm so sorry, Emma," she said, tears in her eyes. "I should have protected you from him sooner." I hugged her tightly. "It's not your fault, Mama," I said. "You're doing everything you can now." That night, Mrs. Reynolds made a big pot of chicken soup. We all sat around the table, and even though I was still scared, I felt a little stronger knowing my mother was fighting for me. After dinner, I went to my room and curled up under the quilt. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. My father's angry face haunted my mind, but so did my mother's fierce eyes when she said she would protect me. The next day, we went to the courthouse. It was a big, cold building with high ceilings and marble floors that echoed when you walked. I held my mother's hand so tightly that my fingers hurt. We sat in a small waiting room with other people. Some of them looked sad, others angry. I wondered what their stories were. When it was our turn, we went into a small courtroom. The judge was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He listened carefully as my mother explained what my father had done and how he had threatened to sell me. My heart was beating so fast, but I kept my eyes on the judge, hoping he could see the truth. When my mother finished talking, the judge looked at me. "Emma, do you want to say anything?" he asked gently. I swallowed hard. "I just want to be safe," I said in a small voice. "I don't want to go back with him." The judge nodded. "Thank you, Emma," he said kindly. "You're very brave." After a few moments, he said, "I'm granting the emergency protective order. Your father is not allowed to come near you or your mother." My mother let out a shaky breath, and I felt tears well up in my eyes. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. When we left the courthouse, my mother knelt down and looked me in the eyes. "We're going to be okay, Emma," she said. "I promise you." "I believe you, Mama," I said. We went back to Mrs. Reynolds' house, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. That night, I slept without waking up in the dark, shaking with fear. But even though we had the order, I knew my father was still out there. I knew he wouldn't give up easily. The next morning, my mother and I sat in the kitchen while Mrs. Reynolds poured us tea. My mother's phone rang, and she answered quickly. It was Ms. Thompson. She said that my father had been served the protective order and that he wasn't allowed to come near us. But she also said he had hired a lawyer of his own and was trying to fight it. He's going to try to say you're making it all up, she warned gently. But we know the truth, Emma. And we're going to stand by you. I nodded, even though I felt a chill run down my spine. My father was going to fight back, but I wasn't going to let him win. That afternoon, my mother and I went for a walk in the park to clear our heads. The sun was shining, and kids were playing on the swings. For a little while, it almost felt normal. My mother held my hand and said, "Emma, no matter what your father tries to do, I'm going to keep fighting for you. You're my daughter. I love you more than anything." "I love you too, Mama," I said. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You're my whole world, Emma," she said softly. "I promise you, he's never going to hurt you again." I believed her. I had to believe her. A few days later, I was in the kitchen with Mrs. Reynolds when the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. It was still early in the morning, and we weren't expecting anyone. Mrs. Reynolds looked out the window and then turned back to me with a worried face. "Emma, go upstairs to your room," she said gently but firmly. "Now, sweetheart." I did as she said, my heart pounding. I sat on the edge of my bed, listening carefully. Downstairs, I heard my mother's voice, low and shaky, and another voice, my father's. He was here. I crept closer to the door, pressing my ear against it. I could hear my father's voice, loud and angry. "I'm here to see my daughter," he said. "You're not allowed to be here," my mother said firmly. "There's a restraining order, and you're breaking it." "She's my daughter too," he snapped. "You can't keep her from me." "She doesn't want to see you," my mother said. Her voice was shaking, but she didn't back down. "Leave, or I'll call the police." For a moment, everything went silent. I imagined my father's face, red with anger. I thought about how he used to look at me like I was something he owned, like he could just sell me to anyone he wanted. Then I heard him speak again, his voice lower and colder. "You're going to regret this, Karen," he said. "You can't keep me away forever." My mother didn't answer. I heard her footsteps coming up the stairs, and she opened my door. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking. "He's gone," she whispered. "But I called the police. They're on their way." I nodded, my whole body trembling. "Mama, I'm scared," I said. She sat beside me and pulled me into her arms. "I know, baby. But we're going to be okay. We're not alone. Mrs. Reynolds and Ms. Thompson are helping us. And the police will help too." A few minutes later, a police officer came to the house. He was tall and kind, with dark hair and a calm voice. "Emma, are you okay?" he asked gently. I nodded, even though I felt like I could barely breathe. "Your father isn't allowed to come here anymore," he said. "If he does, he'll be arrested. Do you understand?" "Yes," I said softly. He smiled a little. "You're very brave, Emma," he said. "I want you to remember that." I tried to hold on to his words. I wanted to be brave. I didn't want to be afraid anymore. After the police left, Mrs. Reynolds made us all hot chocolate. My mother sat at the table, staring into her cup. She looked so tired, like she hadn't slept in days. "I'm sorry, Emma," she said softly. "I never wanted you to go through this." "It's not your fault, Mama," I said. "You're trying to protect me. That's what matters." She smiled a little and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "We're going to get through this," she said. "Together." The next morning, Ms. Thompson came over to talk to us. She brought more papers and explained that we needed to show the judge that my father was breaking the order. "If he comes back again, call the police right away," she said. "Keep records of everything. We're building a case against him." I nodded, even though my stomach was in knots. I didn't want to see my father ever again. But I knew he wouldn't give up easily. That night, I had trouble sleeping. I lay in bed, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. Every little noise made me jump. I kept imagining my father's voice, cold and angry. I remembered the day he told me he was going to sell me. I could still see the look in his eyes, like I was nothing but a thing he could trade away. I squeezed my pillow tight, trying to push the memory out of my head. I told myself I was safe now. My mother was here. Mrs. Reynolds was here. The police were on my side. But deep down, I still felt like a little girl lost in the dark. The next day, my mother and I went to the grocery store. Mrs. Reynolds said it was good for us to get out of the house for a little while. I was nervous, but I didn't want to let my fear control me. At the store, everything felt normal. People were shopping, kids were laughing, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. For a moment, I almost forgot about my father. But then, as we were leaving the store, I saw him. He was standing near the parking lot, his arms crossed and a cold smile on his face. My mother saw him too. She grabbed my hand and pulled me close. "Don't look at him, Emma," she said, her voice low. But it was too late. He was already walking toward us. "Karen," he said in that low, dangerous voice. "We need to talk." "No," my mother said, her voice firm. "Stay away from us." He laughed a little. "You think you can keep her from me?" "She's mine too." "She's not yours," my mother snapped. "She's my daughter. And you're never going to hurt her again." People were starting to stare. My father's smile faded, and his eyes turned hard. "This isn't over," he said. "You can't stop me." My mother didn't answer. She pulled me away and hurried back to the car. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. When we got home, Mrs. Reynolds was waiting for us. "Did he follow you?" she asked, her face pale. My mother shook her head. "No, but he was there. He's not going to stop." Mrs. Reynolds took a deep breath. "We'll call Ms. Thompson. And the police. We're not going to let him win." That night, I sat in bed with my mother. She read me a story like she used to when I was little, her soft voice wrapping around me like a warm blanket. When she finished, she kissed my forehead. "You're so strong, Emma," she said. "I'm so proud of you." "I'm proud of you too, Mama," I said softly. She smiled, tears in her eyes. "We're going to be okay," she said again. "We're going to find a way to make this right." I believed her. Even though I was still scared, I believed her. The next morning, Ms. Thompson came over again. She had a plan. She said we could go to court and tell the judge everything that had happened, every time my father had come near us, every threat he had made. "He's trying to break the law," she said. "The judge needs to know how dangerous he is." I nodded, feeling a spark of hope. Maybe if the judge really understood, he would make sure my father stayed away for good. Mrs. Reynolds made sandwiches for lunch, and we all sat together at the table. Even though it was scary, I felt stronger knowing we were all on the same side. After lunch, I went up to my room to draw. Drawing helped me feel calm. I drew a picture of my mother and me, holding hands, standing in front of a bright sun. I wanted to believe that was our future, safe and warm and full of light. I taped the picture to my wall so I could see it every day. That night, as I lay in bed, I whispered to myself, "I'm brave. I'm safe. My mother loves me." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The day of the court hearing arrived. My mother woke me up early. The sun wasn't even up yet, and the whole house felt cold and quiet. She helped me put on my nicest dress, a light blue one with white flowers. She wore a dark suit, and her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked serious and strong. Mrs. Reynolds drove us to the courthouse. I sat in the back seat, staring out the window as the city passed by. The tall buildings, the flashing lights, the people rushing down the sidewalks, it all felt so far away from what was about to happen. When we got to the courthouse, Ms. Thompson was waiting for us. She wore a dark blue suit and carried a brown leather briefcase. She gave me a gentle smile as we walked in. "You're very brave, Emma," she said. "Today is about telling the truth. The judge needs to hear what happened, and I know you can do it." I nodded, even though my stomach was tight with nerves. My hands were shaking, so I held my mother's hand tight. She squeezed back, her own hand trembling too. Inside the courthouse, everything was quiet and serious. The ceilings were high, and the floors were shiny like mirrors. We had to walk through a metal detector, and a security guard checked my mother's bag. In the waiting area, we sat on a wooden bench. My mother held me close, and Ms. Thompson went over some papers. She said we would have to stand in front of the judge and tell the truth about what my father had done. "You don't have to be scared," she said. "The judge is here to listen and to help." I tried to believe her, but I was still scared. I kept seeing my father's face in my mind, his cold smile, the way he had looked at me when he said he would sell me. I took a deep breath and tried to push those thoughts away. Finally, it was time to go into the courtroom. The room was big and quiet. There were rows of wooden benches, and at the front was a big chair where the judge sat. The judge was a woman with short gray hair and kind eyes. She wore a black robe and looked very serious. My father was already there, sitting on the other side of the room. He wore a dark suit too, but he didn't look strong or kind. He looked angry. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed, and he gave me a look that made me shiver. I looked away and held my mother's hand even tighter. The judge called everyone to stand up. Ms. Thompson stood beside us, her hand on my shoulder. "Today we're here to decide if the protection order should stay in place," the judge said in a calm, steady voice. "We'll listen to both sides and then make a decision." Ms. Thompson spoke first. She told the judge everything my father had done, how he had hit my mother and me, how he had threatened to sell me, how he had come to the house even though he wasn't supposed to. I watched the judge's face. She listened carefully, her eyes serious. Then my father's lawyer spoke. He was a tall man in a black suit with shiny shoes. He said my father loved me and just wanted to see me. He said my mother was keeping me away from him for no reason. "He's her father," the lawyer said. "He has a right to see her." Ms. Thompson stood up again. "He has no right to hurt her," she said firmly. "He has no right to threaten her safety." The judge nodded. "Thank you," she said. "Now I'd like to hear from Emma." My heart was pounding as Ms. Thompson led me to the front of the room. My legs felt weak, but I told myself I could do this. I had to. "Do you promise to tell the truth?" the judge asked. "I promise," I said in a shaky voice. I looked at the judge, not at my father. I told her everything, how my father had hit me, how he had told me he was going to sell me to another family, how he had come to our house and scared me and my mother. Tears filled my eyes, but I kept going. My voice got stronger as I spoke. "He said I wasn't worth anything," I said softly. "He said he was going to sell me because he didn't want me anymore." The judge's eyes were kind. "Thank you, Emma," she said. "You're very brave." After I finished talking, my mother stood up to tell the judge what had happened to her too. Her voice was calm and steady, but I could see her hands shaking. "My daughter deserves to feel safe," she said. "I will do anything to protect her." My father's lawyer tried to say more, but the judge held up her hand. "I've heard enough," she said. She looked at me and my mother. "Emma, your safety is the most important thing here," she said. "I'm going to extend the protection order. Your father is not allowed to come near you or your mother. If he does, he will go to jail." I felt like I could finally breathe again. My mother started to cry, and she hugged me tight. Ms. Thompson gave us a relieved smile. My father stood up and glared at us. His face was red with anger, but he didn't say a word. The security guard led him out of the courtroom. As he walked past me, he gave me one last cold stare. But I didn't look away this time. I stared right back at him, feeling stronger than I ever had before. After court, we went back to Mrs. Reynolds' house. She had baked fresh cookies for us, and the sweet smell filled the kitchen. "You did so well, Emma," she said, giving me a big hug. "I'm so proud of you." I smiled a little. For the first time in a long time, I felt proud of myself too. That night, my mother and I sat on the couch under a soft blanket. We watched an old movie, and for a while, everything felt almost normal. My mother held my hand and kissed the top of my head. "I love you, Emma," she said softly. "I love you too, Mama," I said. "Thank you for fighting for me." She smiled. "I will always fight for you." Even though I was still scared, I knew we had won an important battle that day. My father couldn't hurt me anymore. And with my mother and all the kind people helping us, I knew we would be okay. The days after the court hearing felt different. For the first time in a long time, I felt a small light inside me. It was like a tiny flame that said, "You are safe now." Even though the memories of what happened with my father still made me sad and scared, I began to believe that things could get better. My mother and I moved into a small apartment not far from the city center. It was not fancy, but it was warm and safe. The walls were painted a soft yellow, and there was a little garden outside with flowers my mother planted. She said flowers could make the heart feel happy. Every morning, I woke up and looked out the window at the trees and the people walking by. It felt peaceful. I went to a new school where no one knew about my past. I made a few friends who were kind and funny. Sometimes, I laughed so much it hurt my cheeks. My mother found a new job cleaning offices at night. It was hard work, but she was happy to have something to do. She always told me, "We are starting fresh, Emma. A new life, full of hope." Sometimes, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her crying softly. I knew she missed the days when things were easier. But she never let those tears stop her from being strong for me. One afternoon, I met a woman named Mrs. Jenkins at the school. She was the school counselor, and she had a gentle smile and warm eyes. She invited me to her office to talk. "Emma," she said, "I know you've been through a lot. It's okay to feel angry, sad, or scared. But you're not alone. I'm here to help." I wasn't sure what to say at first. No one had ever talked to me like that before. But slowly, I began to tell her about the things I was feeling inside, things I didn't even understand myself. Mrs. Jenkins listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You are very brave to share your story. Healing takes time, but you will get stronger every day." At home, my mother and I made new rules. No secrets, no hiding feelings. We talked about everything, even when it was hard. She helped me with my homework and made sure I ate good food. She told me stories about when she was young, and sometimes we sang songs together. One night, as we sat on the couch, she said, "Emma, I want you to know that your past does not define you. You are smart, kind, and full of courage. No one can take that away from you." I looked at her and smiled. "I want to believe that, Mama." "You will," she said. I started to dream again. I dreamed of being a teacher one day, helping other kids who felt lost and scared like I once did. I wanted to be the light for someone else, just like Mrs. Jenkins was for me. Every morning, I got up with a new hope. Every night, I thanked God for keeping us safe. One afternoon, as I walked home from school, I saw a group of kids playing basketball. I wanted to join, but I was too shy. Then, a boy named Tyler waved at me. "Hey, Emma. Come play with us," he called. I took a deep breath and ran over. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. My mother found a support group for women who had faced abuse. She started going every week. Sometimes, she brought home stories of hope and healing. I could see her smile growing more and more. One evening, she told me, "Emma, we are survivors. Our pain is real, but so is our strength. I nodded, feeling that strength inside me too. Months passed, and I saw my mother grow stronger and happier. She got a better job, and we saved money to move to a bigger apartment. One day, Mrs. Reynolds came to visit. She hugged me tightly and said, "You have come so far, Emma. I'm proud of you." I smiled, feeling the warmth of love surround me. The scars from my father's betrayal would always be part of my story, but they no longer controlled my life. I was no longer the scared little girl. I was a survivor. A girl who had faced darkness and was stepping into the light. My mother and I sat under the stars one night. She held my hand and whispered, "This is our new beginning." I looked up at the sky, the stars shining bright. I knew she was right. This was the start of something better, a life filled with hope, love, and new dreams.